Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something really fascinating. We're going to peel back the incredibly complex layers of human conflict, and we're looking at it all through the lens of a raw, totally revealing piece of writing simply titled Hostile. Have you ever interacted with someone who just seemed, well, entirely consumed by anger? Someone whose default setting is literally just pushing people away? Well, we're going to use this powerful text to figure out exactly what makes that type of aggression tick. We'll trace it all the way from the sharp, prickly outer edges of a person's defenses right down to the surprising vulnerability hiding at their core. Let's get into it.
Okay, the text hits us right out of the gate with this jarring, aggressive opening that immediately puts you on the defensive. It says, "I see you not worthy of me. I throw you out like a rubbish." I mean, wow. Words like not worthy and throw you out like a rubbish are literally designed to shock. It's confrontational, it's highly insulting, and boom, it instantly builds this massive wall between the speaker and the subject. When we hear language like this in the real world, our gut instinct is almost always to either fight back or just run in the opposite direction.
But this seriously abrasive start begs the ultimate question about human behavior, doesn't it? When we can actually look past our initial knee-jerk reaction to this kind of insult, we really have to ask ourselves, what is actually driving this extreme level of outward cruelty? Is it just pure malice, or is there something else entirely going on under the hood? To figure that out, we need to systematically break down the psychology happening in this source material.
Which brings us to the first stage of our breakdown, the facade of hostility, or that tough outer layer of aggression. To understand the root cause of this behavior, we first have to examine the surface layer, that heavy, incredibly thick armor the narrator is actively projecting to the outside world. This is the facade. Just think about the bluntly dismissive language here. I treat you like an unwanted present, right? The narrator is trying to establish absolute dominance over the other person by basically reducing them to a literal object. By saying, "I see you, but I don't want you," they're actively acknowledging the person's humanity, only to just immediately discard it. It's this very calculated, cold way of saying, "I hold all the power to accept you, and I am choosing not to."
And this brilliantly illustrates the narrator's specific arsenal of psychological tactics. We literally see these tactics in action. Dismissing the other's worth, treating human beings as unwanted objects, explicitly plotting to make you pay, and belittling the other person just to make themselves feel larger. Every single one of these tactics serves one specific purpose: to keep others at a supposedly safe distance while maintaining a posture of total, absolute control. But as we all know, keeping up a facade like that, it takes a massive amount of energy.
So, let's look at the next piece of the puzzle, justifying the aggression and the rationalization of cruelty. Seriously, why would someone put so much energy into being so cruel? Well, nobody actually thinks they're the villain of their own story, right? So let's explore how the human ego swoops in to rationalize this toxic, isolating behavior. The really crucial point here is that hostility isn't just an emotion in this context, it acts as a very specific, highly effective psychological tool. The text explicitly tells us that hostility provides justification. It basically allows the narrator to feel legally or morally right in their own head. If they can convince themselves that the other person is fundamentally flawed, unworthy, or just less than, then their aggressive actions are suddenly, in their own twisted logic anyway, completely justified. It's the ultimate protective mechanism for a fragile ego. And we actually see the narrator openly admitting to this selfishness right here. They say, "I follow the crowd and believe I can be better than you can." They are fully relying on group mentality and an inflated sense of self to justify treating someone else as completely unequal. They cherish their own mind and their own goals while actively tossing aside the thoughts and feelings of anyone else. It's a pretty desperate grab for status, right? They're trying to convince themselves they are better simply by shouting it out loud.
But here is where things get really fascinating. Let's move into the hidden insecurities and the huge reveal beneath the surface.
This is where the entire narrative of the text completely flips upside down. We're finally moving past all that spiky armor and those flimsy justifications right into the bleeding heart of the hostility. Notice this super dramatic pivot as the narrator's arrogant facade just cracks wide open. First, we have this outward projection of absolute dominance. I act like I am to take you apart. But then the text hits us with the inward reality. I am but a little scared man. It turns out the hostility is entirely fake. It's nothing more than a loud, intensely aggressive cover-up for a deeply, deeply rooted fear.
The text even hands us this incredibly striking metaphor for the behavior: a baby on the pram. Think about that. All of this terrifying aggression, the threats to make you pay, the constant belittling, it is, at its absolute core, just a selfish adult throwing a massive emotional tantrum. They just want to have it all, and more importantly, they desperately need to be right. Because honestly, for them, being wrong feels way too emotionally dangerous to handle.
So when we finally strip away that hostile armor, we don't find a monster at all. We find a really stark, painful psychological profile. We see someone weighed down heavily by deep insecurity, literally carrying shame and guilt around like an anchor. They're experiencing a profound sense of isolation and dealing with what they call a losing mind. That explosive anger we saw at the very beginning, it wasn't a sign of strength or power. It was a glaring symptom of immense internal suffering and distress.
And that brings us right to the tragic core of our explainer today. The narrator confesses, "No friend, no joy, nothing left. I am on my own in a lonely cage." It is absolutely heartbreaking. The intense hostility that was meant to protect them, to push others away so they couldn't get hurt, actually just ended up trapping them in a cage entirely of their own making. By pushing everyone out like rubbish, they guaranteed their own total, inescapable isolation. Which culminates in this absolutely devastating realization: I am hostile to me more than you, friend. Ultimately, the person who suffers the most from this aggressive posture isn't the target of the anger. It's the narrator themselves. They are their own worst victim. The hostility has done vastly more damage to their own internal world than it ever could to the people around them. Which brings us to the final turning point: a plea for connection and the final resolution. Having reached the absolute rock bottom of this emotional iceberg, and finally acknowledging the sheer pain of their self-made cage, the narrator makes one final, incredibly vulnerable shift. Just look at how completely the tone is changed here. The hostility totally dissolves into this raw, unfiltered plea for physical connection and empathy. Give me a hug and a friendly shake. The exact same person who previously told us they wanted to make you pay is now literally begging for someone to be brave enough to step through their fading hostility and rescue them from their pain. It's a full admission that they just cannot fix this alone. And as you'll see, this naturally builds from total isolation into an actual opportunity for a genuine, reciprocal relationship. The text lays out a really clear path to change here. First, the narrator has to admit their inner fear. Second, they actively ask for a brave connection from the other person. Third, they offer something real in return, bringing new opportunities to stay, completely moving away from pushing people out. And finally, arriving at a state of genuine, felt gratitude.
The whole journey ends on this profoundly high, beautiful note. You have me with gratitude and changed. It reveals the astonishing, truly transformative power of empathy and connection. When someone is brave enough to see past the aggression and offer that metaphorical hug, it legitimately has the power to dismantle even the thickest, most toxic walls of hostility, leaving a changed, immensely grateful person behind. Understanding this text completely shifts how we view conflict, doesn't it? It leaves us with an incredibly powerful thought to take away from this explainer. The next time someone throws their hostility your way and acts like they want to take you apart, will you take it personally? Or will you be able to look right past their abrasive defenses, recognize the self-inflicted cage they are trapped in, and actually see the scared, lonely person hiding underneath all that armor? Thanks so much for joining me for this analysis today. Keep learning and always keep looking beneath the surface.